Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharadhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachare Yamunatiravanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharadhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Bharadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachare Yamunatiravanachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Parafrajacharis, Tadasasi Samad, His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Sankirtan Yagya ki, Gopremanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 4. Sati quits her body. Text 2. Is it 2? Okay, text 2. Suhrid Didriksha Pratigata Durmana Snehad Rudati Ashro Kalati Vivala Bhavam Bhavani Apratipurusham Rusha Pradhakshyati Vaikshata Jata Vepato Surididriksha Pratigata Durmana Snehadrudatyashru Kalati Vivala Bhavam Bhavan Ya Pratipurusham Rusha Pratakshyati Vaikshata Jata Vepato Surididriksha Pratigata Durmana Snehadrudatyashru Kalati Vivala Bhavam Bhavan Ya Pratipurusham Rusha Pradakshati Vaikshata Jata Vepato Surididriksha Pratigata Durmana Snehadrudat Yashru Kalati Vivala. Bhavam Bhavanya Pratipurusham Rusha. Pradakshati Vaikshata Jata Vepato. Mataji's. Surit Didriksha, of the desire to see her relatives. Pratigata, the prevention. Durmana, feeling sorry. Snehat, from affection. Rudati, crying. Ashrukala, by drops of tears. Ativivala, very much afflicted. Bhavam, Lord Shiva. Bhavani, Sati, Apratipurusham, without an equal or rival. Rusha, with anger. Pradakshati, to blast. Eva, as if. Aikshata, looked at. Jatavepato, shaking. Translation: Sati felt very sorry at being forbidden to go see her relatives at her father's house, and due to affection for them, tears fell from her eyes. Shaking and very much afflicted, she looked at her uncommon husband, Lord Shiva, as if she were going to blast him with her vision. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word apratipurusham used in this verse means one who has no equal. Lord Shiva has no equal in the material world in regard to equality towards everyone. His wife, Sati, knew that her husband was equal towards everyone. So why, in this case, was he so unkind to his wife that he did not allow her to go to her father's house? This distressed her more than she could tolerate, and she looked at her husband as if she were ready to blast him with her vision. In other words, since Lord Shiva is the Atma, Shiva also means Atma, it is indicated here that Sati was prepared to commit suicide. Another meaning of the word apratipurusha is the personality who has no rival. Since Lord Shiva could not be persuaded to give her permission, Sati took shelter of a woman's last weapon, weeping, which forces a husband to agree to the proposal of his wife. Suridriksha pratigata duramana snehadrudat yashru kalati vivala bhavam bhavan ya pratipurusham rusha Pradakshati Vaikshata Jatavepatu. Sati felt very sorry at being forbidden to go see her relatives at her father's house. And due to affection for them, tears fell from her eyes. Shaking and very much afflicted, she looked at her uncommon husband, Lord Shiva, as if she were going to blast him with her vision. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pascha Chadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, well, here twice the possibility of Sati doing something just too extreme is referred to. First of all, that being forbidden, at least that term is used, although it hasn't been exactly in as many words, but very strongly advised not to go. So you could say forbidden. So this distressed her more than she could tolerate. Means she's about to just lose control. And then Srila Prabhupada says, it is indicated here that Sati was prepared to commit suicide if she's not allowed to go. So, of course, we know very well, I think we're all familiar enough with the story, that in due course she does commit suicide due to distress because of the situation, but from a slightly different point of view, from the point of view of being ignored or actually treated in a like neglectful way, but more than neglectful, treated in a hateful type of way, actually, by her father. So just an interesting little detail which is implied to some degree here in these couple of statements we just referred to in the purport. Actually, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his purport to the previous verse, he makes the point that Lord Shiva, of course, he's very, very intelligent and very incisive type of intelligence to understand situations, to understand people and how people are feeling and how to deal with them, in taking all of that into consideration. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Lord Shiva understood that if he did not let her go, she would commit suicide. And of course he understands, and he's already said it in the previous chapter, he said that if you go, it may well lead to you committing suicide. So he can see that she is just on the edge of a real personal disaster. And he doesn't want to be the cause of it. And in that way, be implicated possibly in his wife committing suicide. If she's going to have to do something as extremely drastic as that, then at least he doesn't want to be blamed or actually responsible. Yeah, because responsible means there'll be some consequences in terms of his responsibility. So, as described, as Srila Prabhupada describes in the purport, this term, apratipurusham, it used in the verse, it can be understood in different ways, as is the case with so many Sanskrit words. And one meaning is one who has no equal. So Lord Shiva is one who has no equal, but then Srila Prabhupada does elaborate further that he has no equal in a specific sense. He has no equal in regard to equality towards other people. In other words, he may possibly not. There may be others who are in sort of more developed positions than him in other senses, in the sense of power, beauty, and intelligence, and so many qualities, personal qualities, the Supreme Personality of Godhead at least, and sometimes devotees of the Supreme Lord. They show more qualification than Lord Shiva. But when it comes to being equal towards everyone and not taking sides and no favoritism, this these types of attitudes, then Lord Shiva, he is very, very special. He is really very special, because even Lord Krishna sometimes takes sides. Yes, sometimes he supports his devotee and breaks even his promise for the sake of his devotee. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. So Lord Krishna does like this sometimes, and of course there are famous examples of Krishna doing that, breaking his promise not to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra, but then taking up the chariot wheel as a weapon to defend Arjuna when Arjuna was being attacked by Bhishma, who was just so intensely inspired to fight with Arjuna that it looked pretty much certain that Bhishma would kill him. So then Lord Krishna took up the wheel, broken wheel of a broken chariot, and came rushing towards Bhishma. And there's a famous painting, I'm sure many of you have seen, of Arjuna doing, it's almost like a rugby tackle. It's something like that, to stop the Lord. And his reasoning, Arjuna's reason for trying to stop the Lord is that, my Lord, if you do this, if you don't stop doing this, then you will have broken your promise to not fight, and then people will speak badly about you. You'll be criticized and sort of, in a certain sense, rightly so. So Arjuna wanted to stop Lord Krishna from protecting him, from attacking Bhishma, to protect Arjuna. So, and there were other things. At least the Lord advised Arjuna to kill Karna when Karna was defenseless. And this, according to Kshatriya Dharma, this is really not done at all. If there's some fight between Kshatriyas and one of them becomes disadvantaged, somehow drops the weapon or is knocked to the ground or something of that sort, then according to traditional Kshatriya Dharma, the other one must step back and wait and let the one who's been sort of indisposed recover himself. This is all Kshatriya Dharma. And it's there in Krishna conscious Kshatriya Dharma also. But when Karna's chariot wheel was stuck in some hole or some rut in the ground, and Karna had to get out and try physically to lift it out and had his back turned to Arjuna, then Lord Krishna said, "Kill him now." And Arjuna was hesitant, but then Lord Krishna told him, just kill him now. And Arjuna did that. So, in terms of equality to everyone, of course, ultimately, Lord Krishna, if we really look into the matter, then we see that Lord Krishna basically has no equals at all in any respect. But from a certain point of view, it can be said, and it is said right here, that Lord Shiva is such a special person. a Pratipurusham, one who has no equal, and particularly in terms of equality towards everyone. And Sati, therefore, is confused, or she feels confused because she feels, of course, incorrectly and unfairly and just to her own detriment ultimately, that you're meant to be a Pratipurusham, equal towards everyone. And everyone, and what to speak of your wife, who is, and it has been mentioned, the wife can be seen to be the better half of the husband. When a man and a woman become husband and wife, then it can be said they've become like a type of super entity. Two have combined to become one in a certain sense. And in that sense, it can be said, and it is said, sometimes at least, that the wife sometimes at least may be the better half of the husband. The husband may make some wrong evaluation, something like that, and the wife may help him to correct things and become properly situated. You know, there's a famous story from Badrinath that Lord Shiva and Parvati, Badrinath was their place, and they had some sort of house or some sort of dwelling there which they lived in. Every day they'd go out and move around and gather foodstuffs and whatever. And one day they were there moving around, and they saw this little boy, this child, who was crying, and there was no mother or anybody else around. And it looked like this little child had been abandoned. This little, very dark-skinned child, as a subtle hint to who the child might be. And this little child was crying and crying, just distressed. And Parvati, being a soft-hearted lady, very kind-hearted lady, said to Lord Shiva, "Oh, we must help him. Let's pick him up and take him home and look after him." And Lord Shiva said, "No. Something is wrong here." And Parvati said, "No, come on, little boy, we got to help him. How can we just leave him?" And Lord Shiva said, "But something is wrong. What's a little child doing out here in the middle of nowhere, many kilometers from civilization? Something's wrong. There's some strange thing happening behind the scenes." And Parvati told him, "You are just a hard-hearted man," which is sometimes said, and sometimes it's true. You're just a hard-hearted man. You don't want to help this poor little child. And Lord Shiva said, "Oh, well, okay, at your own risk." So she picked up the child, took the child home, and then they went out and continued looking around. And they came back, and what did they find? The door was locked from the inside. And what happened? The little child has locked the door by mistake somehow, they thought. So they looked in the window. There's the little child. Hello, open the door. And the little child goes, hello, no. No, come on, you must open the door because we have to come in. No. Listen, it's our house. You have to open the door. No, it's my house now. And they had nowhere else to go. So they had to leave and go to Kailash. And so Krishna, if you hadn't guessed it by that time, Krishna was that little child, and he sort of stole Badrinath from them. And it's nicer, actually. And he took over Kedarnath, which is also nice, but not as nice. So anyway, one has to be careful. As Srila Prabhupada says here, that Sati, she started crying. She took shelter of a woman's last weapon. Did you know that, ladies? You didn't know that? Well, just see. A woman's last weapon is weeping, which forces a husband to agree to the proposal of his wife. And that's actually what happens, is that Lord Shiva agrees, all right, and he stops resisting and lets her go. But of course he knows at least what's likely to happen, or even what is going to happen. But seeing it's inevitable and it's extremely inauspicious, he didn't want to be part of it. He didn't want to be implicated in her committing suicide. And of course, Parvati, Lord Shiva, they are eternal associates. So as is explained further on, after Sati does commit suicide, she takes birth again. Well, she takes birth as Parvati, the daughter of the Himalayas, and then she's reunited with Lord Shiva. And then, as they say, they lived happily ever after. But, there are many things to learn from this whole pastime. There are many things to learn. One is, of course, the first thing is, don't follow in the footsteps of Daksha. Don't be envious. Even if someone seems to mistreat you and it seems to be unfair, and you might think, how could Krishna allow this? Because I'm Krishna's devotee. How could he allow me to be abused? But somehow or other, by the arrangement of the Lord, whatever situation a devotee gets into, even an apparently negative situation, by the mercy of the Lord, it becomes corrected in due course, and ultimately even things come out better. Things come out better as a direct result of what otherwise would be considered and was considered inauspicious and undesirable. Even in Srila Prabhupada's pastimes, there were different situations like that. We were reading through the Leela, we're still reading through the Leelamrita. And Srila Prabhupada, we see his enthusiasm to preach and to give people Krishna consciousness and help people become Krishna conscious is just so amazing. Such amazing enthusiasm, determination to just do what it takes and tolerate just practically any type of difficulty. And part of that was that he went to, what was the name of the place? Anyway, he went not to Jhansi. He went to Jhansi, and he got a place. And for free, he got a place, at least to use. And it was a really good place. And he thought, this is it. I will establish ISKCON here and spread Krishna consciousness from here, like this. But then, as things worked out, and talk about a, kind of pathetic situation, one lady came along who was the wife of the governor of the state, I guess is Uttar Pradesh. And the lady, the owner was closely connected with the governor, and the governor's wife wanted to establish a ladies' social club. Talk about highly elevated, transcendental program for the ladies to get together and natter about life in their families and how are the children and whatever else. And so Prabhupada couldn't get the place. He offered to pay, but the person would not, the owner would not agree, and Prabhupada lost the place. So on a certain level, it could easily be said that this was very inauspicious and just very unfortunate, and where was the hand of Krishna? Just like when maybe whatever it was, 10 years ago or something, there was the gigantic tsunami which wiped out some area in Indonesia. And I remember we were driving to a program one evening in Johannesburg, and there was a newspaper little advertisement on the side of the road, and it said, tsunami, where was God? In other words, God was asleep at the wheel. He was negligent, which of course is never the case, and particularly with the devotees. Even when there is something which is apparently inauspicious, but as part of the Lord's plan, at least with devotees who are very sincere and dedicated, it's just a step in a process towards greater things and better things in Krishna consciousness. So yes, this situation, we can learn that. We should not be envious of anyone. And even when there's a situation like here, to Sati, it appears unfair. My husband, who is meant to be the most equipoised person of all, is not being equal to, of all people, his wife, who, if anyone should get good treatment, she's the one. So, yeah, she becomes so extremely bewildered that, as we said, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments in his purport to the previous verse, that if he had actually stopped her, rather than just advising that it's not good and you're going to get hurt, And it could be so bad that you might even become suicidal, and so it would really not be a good idea to go. But she cannot grasp. And why is it that she cannot grasp the value of what Lord Shiva is saying? It's not because she wants to go to the sacrifice and see the Supreme Personality of Godhead worshipped and glorified and just all the transcendental whatever's going to happen there. No, it's because she wants to see her relatives. And another lesson, therefore, is don't be too attached to your relatives, particularly if they're not devotees. I mean, in this case, they're demigods, so they're basically devotees. But as is typical for demigods, they're mixed devotees. So sometimes, well, as Queen Kunti prays, and her relatives, they were really devotees. They were the Pandavas. But she prays to Lord Krishna that, please let my attention and affection flow to you and not to my relatives. Please help me to detach from my relatives and let my attention and affection flow towards you like the Ganges flows to the ocean. That's Queen Kunti. She is on a more advanced level than Sati. And indeed, I forget whose purport it was, but there's a purport in which it is plainly said that Sati was in Maya. She was just in simple, basic, traditional, classical Maya, bewildered by material affection and bewildered by expectations on the basis of material affection, but expectations, because it's all material, expectations which they were really false expectations, expecting she'd be nicely received by her father. So yes, like this. And husbands, we don't have any here. Well, that's interesting. That's good. Try and stay non-husbands. That's my advice. But if you ever end up becoming one, bear this in mind, that if there's some back and forth between you and your wife, and you really feel that this, whatever it is just not the right thing, but she starts crying, just remember, wait a minute, this is her last weapon, and try and tolerate. Yes, so she was looking at him with these misconceptions driving her consciousness and looking at him as if she was ready to blast him or sort of kill him or really do something to him physically. Yeah. It's Maya. It's really Maya. And in Krishna consciousness, one has to beware of Maya. And when one sees Maya is coming, then one has to know this is Maya, and by all means I must not succumb to this Maya. Hare Krishna. Any comment or question? Yes, just a second or two.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for that wonderful class. I was just, it's a comment that although Sati in the form of Durga, she's in charge of Maya, and it's surprising how she comes under the influence of Maya as well.
It's a comment.
It's a comment, yeah. But
I just missed the last sentence.
I said
she's in charge of Maya as Durga.
And she comes under its influence as Sati. So
yeah, sure. Just see. Yeah. Maya is dangerous for Maya. Well, it's the Lord's Maya, and she is just on his behalf presiding over it. It's not like she is the complete controller of Maya. No. She falls under the influence of the Lord's external potency sometimes. But you know, the thing is, one thing is about how the whole situation develops and she's reborn as Parvati and reunited, is that as Parvati she's more elevated than as Sati.
Okay.
She's more elevated. So I haven't read it, but I was just thinking that if in the process of all of this and her suicide, if her husband, Lord Shiva, had really been responsible by actually stopping her, then for the future it might have, been carried over in her consciousness and affected their relationship. But anyway, that was just a thought, an idea that occurred to me. But definitely as Parvati, she's a more developed person than Sati.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Shri Gurudev, thank you for a wonderful class. You said Mother Sati was put into Maya. She was in Maya at the time of her
of all this, yeah.
Committing suicide. Was it she was momentarily put into Maya like the way Arjuna was momentarily into Maya? Any illusion?
Well, we don't know actually, because it's not that idea. I mean, one can understand how maybe could be the case, perhaps, but it's definitely not stated. So therefore, it's best to probably not really just assume that. There are other cases, Arjuna himself, Yudhisthira after the battle, and Parikshit when he was cursed. It's specifically explained. These were arrangements of the Lord to put these people who otherwise, they don't get into Maya. They don't get into Maya. But to put them sort of into Maya, but in a very special way by the actual arrangement of the Lord. But it's not stated here. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.